Nobody is built the same, and somewhere deep down, you already know that. You've always known it. You just weren't sure if you were allowed to say it, because the thing we keep being told in school, online, in every motivational corner of the internet is that everyone has the same potential, that the playing field is level if you just work hard enough, that the only thing separating you from anyone else is effort and mindset. And that sounds good. It's a comforting idea, but it's not quite true. And I think the gap between that idea and reality is quietly doing a lot of damage. I've been wandering around this world for a while now, just exploring, not building anything particular. And I keep thinking about people I've known, smart people who never went anywhere, people who didn't seem especially gifted who ended up doing remarkable things. And the gap between those two groups wasn't effort exactly, or not just effort. It was something more like fit. Whether the thing they were doing matched something actual inside them, something structural, something they were kind of born toward, which raises a question that makes people uncomfortable. What if some people are genuinely built for certain things and genuinely not built for others? Not as a judgment, just as a fact. We have this cultural allergy to that idea. The moment you suggest that people might be wired differently, that someone might have a natural ceiling in one area and a natural runway in another, it gets heard as elitism, as giving up on people, as an excuse for inequality. And I understand that reaction. History is full of people using "some people are just built differently" as cover for keeping others down. That happened. It was real and it was wrong. But here's the thing. Reacting to that history by insisting everyone is identical doesn't fix anything. It just replaces one distortion with another. And the strange part is, the people who get hurt most by them. Everyone is equal in potential. Story aren't the people at the top, it's everyone else. The people who spend years chasing something that was never going to fit them because they were told that if they just tried hard enough, the fit wouldn't matter. Think about school for a second. The whole system is basically designed around one kind of intelligence: verbal, logical, sitting still, processing information in a specific sequence. And the kids who are built for that thrive, and the kids who aren't, the ones whose intelligence lives in their hands, or in spatial thinking, or in reading a room full of people, those kids get the message that they're behind, that they're not as smart, that they need to try harder at the thing they're not built for, which is genuinely backwards when you say it out loud. Like, imagine telling someone who's 6'5" that they're failing at being small, that they just need to apply themselves more to the concept of not being tall. It sounds absurd, but we do something structurally similar with intelligence all the time, and we don't notice because the box feels invisible from the inside. There's a guy I used to know, genuinely one of the worst students I'd ever seen. Couldn't sit through a class, couldn't remember dates, couldn't write an essay to save his life. The school had basically written him off by year 10. And then he started working with his hands, building things, fixing engines, and he was extraordinary at it, like a different person entirely. Focused in a way that seemed almost impossible given what I'd seen in a classroom. Patient, meticulous, creative in a completely different register. The school version of him was failing. The real version of him was genuinely gifted. Those were the same person, built for something that the system didn't have a category for. And the more I think about it, the more I think this isn't really about intelligence at all. It's about fit. It's about whether the shape of what you're doing matches the shape of what you are. And the shape of what you are is real. It's not just attitude. It's not just upbringing. It's something that shows up early and stays consistent and pulls you in directions you can't fully explain. Some people are built with a deep tolerance for social interaction. They draw energy from rooms full of people. Other people hit a wall fast and need silence to function. Neither of those is better. They're just different configurations. And pretending they're the same, or that one person should just try harder to be more like the other, doesn't help either of them. Bro, think about about that for a second. How much energy do people spend trying to be something they're not built to be because they were told the thing they are isn't enough? That's not motivating. That's exhausting. And the weird part is the exhaustion gets misread as laziness, as lack of discipline, as a character flaw, when actually what's happening is that someone is trying to push a square peg into a round hole and wondering why their arms are tired. There's something in psychology called fit, the match between a person's natural tendencies and the demands of their environment. And the research on this is pretty consistent. People who have high fit aren't just happier, they're more productive, more creative, more resilient under stress. Not because they're trying harder, because the machinery is running in the direction it was built to run. When there's low fit, when someone is spending their energy doing something that's working against their wiring, you get burnout. You get the quiet sense that something is wrong without being able to name it. You get the feeling of working hard and getting nowhere, which is one of the most demoralizing feelings a person can have. And a lot of people are living in low fit situations right now, not because they're lazy or weak, because nobody helped them figure out what they were actually built for. I keep coming back to this idea that knowing your actual shape, the thing you genuinely are rather than the thing you're supposed to be, is maybe one of the more important things a person can figure out. Not in a fixed mindset way. Not, I'm bad at this so I'll never try. More like having an honest map of your own terrain. Knowing where the ground is solid and where it gets swampy. Knowing which direction you move fast and which direction costs you 3 times as much for half the distance. That's not giving up on yourself. That's actually respecting yourself. There's something uncomfortable in all of this though, and I want to sit with it for a second because I don't think it goes away just by acknowledging it. If people are built differently, if some people genuinely have more natural capacity in certain areas than others, then equality of outcome isn't something you can just will into existence. And that's hard because it means some of the fairness we want in the world isn't fully achievable just through effort and good policy. And I don't have a clean answer for that. I don't think anyone does. But I do think there's a difference between accepting that people are built differently and using that as an excuse to stop trying to make things fairer. Those aren't the same response to the same fact. You can hold people are genuinely different, and everyone deserves a fair shot at finding where they fit at the same time. Actually, I think you have to hold both of those at once for either of them to mean anything. What gets me is how early some of this stuff shows up, not in a deterministic way, but you watch kids, like really young kids, before anyone has told them much about who they're supposed to be, and there are already real differences in how they respond to strangers, in their tolerance for chaos or structure, in where their attention goes when nobody is directing it. It's subtle, it's not destiny, but it's something. And it raises this question of what good parenting or good education even looks like if people are built differently. Maybe it looks less like pushing everyone through the same path and more like paying attention, watching what the particular person in front of you is actually drawn toward. What comes easy? What costs them? What makes them light up versus what makes them go somewhere else in their head? That's harder than a standard curriculum, but it might actually work. I went a little off track there. I was thinking about something else for a second. The other thing I keep circling back to is the everyone is equal story, when it's used to mean everyone is the same, ends up being oddly dehumanizing because it erases what's actually particular and real and specific about each person. You're not a blank slate. You came with a configuration with tendencies and edges and directions. And the work of a life, I think, is partly about discovering what that configuration actually is, not what you were told it should be, not what would be convenient for other people, what it actually is. And that's a process. It takes time. You find out partly through failure, honestly, through bumping into things that don't fit and learning something from the collision. Man, I've built nothing in this world, and I've been walking for ages. There's something kind of meditative about just moving through a space without a goal, which maybe is slightly relevant. Because I think one of the costs of the everyone has equal potential, so just try harder narrative is that it attaches your worth to your output. If the system is fair and effort is all that matters, then any shortfall is your fault. You just didn't want it enough. You just weren't disciplined enough. You just weren't enough. And that's a brutal thing to carry around, especially if the real reason things aren't clicking is that you've been optimizing for the wrong fit this whole time. There's a version of accepting that you're built a certain way that is genuinely freeing, not because it lets you off the hook for anything, but because it stops the war with yourself long enough to actually look at what's there. Like, okay, this is what I am. These are the things that come naturally. These are the things that cost me more than they probably cost other people. What can I actually build from here? That's a more useful question than why can't I just be different? And the weird thing is the people who seem most at ease with themselves, not the most successful necessarily, just the most settled, tend to be people who have some clear sense of what they are, not in a rigid way, but they're not constantly arguing with their own nature. They know what kind of work lights them up. They know what kinds of relationships they actually need. They've stopped performing a version of themselves that doesn't fit and started moving in the direction the machinery actually runs. That's not easy to get to. Most people spend years going the wrong direction before they figure it out, and some people never do. That's the sad part. Some people spend their entire lives in low fit, telling themselves they just need to try harder, wondering why it never gets easier, never asking whether the problem is effort or direction, not because they're not smart, just because nobody gave them permission to question the direction, or the tools to even look at themselves clearly enough to see what they were actually built for. I don't know. I keep coming back to this idea that equality, real equality, meaningful equality, isn't sameness. It's something more like everyone getting a genuine chance to discover what they actually are, and then having enough space and resources to build something from that. Not everyone getting pushed through the same path and being told the results are fair because the path was the same. That's a different kind of fairness, a more complicated one, harder to measure, harder to legislate, but maybe closer to what people actually need.